Hi everyone, I'm Daniel. I'm back again to talk about the Feast of Hemlock Vale, the whole campaign, this time with spoilers. Last time I talked about my general thoughts, and many of you actually chimed in to say, okay, cool, but tell me more. What actually happened in your campaign? And I'd like to talk and review some of the details that we didn't get to talk about because of spoilers, so if you haven't played, play the campaign and then come back and let me know what you thought. Of course, I've only played this once through, and this was my party, 3 players, not just me. Played it through 2 other people, and on standard difficulty. So all of my experiences come from that, as well as the 6 scenarios that I played. There's only 6 scenarios you play, as well as the preludes. These two. A Thing in the Depths and Written in Rock I have not opened. I don't know what's in here. Well, there's a player card in there. I don't know anything about them. So let's go ahead and start by talking about the Preludes. So the Preludes are a little bit divisive. I mentioned this in my first video about how they kind of are a pain to set up and a pain to play on, maybe on replays, and you're not really doing much. Some people have said, has gone as far to say, well, you can just skip it. Just, do your do your opening hand, pick out your 5 favorite cards you want, and then put some asset into play and say that you've done all the things in the codex. I'm not sure I agree with that, but there is something to be said for the time that you get sort of scales by player count. So you have less time if you have a higher player count at 3. And we were able to do basically everything in the 3 different preludes that we wanted to do, but it wasn't always obvious that that's what we had to do. So on replay, I think it's a little bit weird because I feel like I want to read ahead and say, okay, which do these things actually do? However, in the first prelude, it really does matter which characters you want to interact with later. But I love reading all the story. I think the Vale itself, I should put out the Vale for us to kind of think about too, because I think the Vale as a location that you return to is pretty sweet. So you always have, I believe these are the 2 act and agendas in the 3. Well, this is a different one, but it's always, I think, the same agenda here. And it's just kind of weird because there's no chaos bag. Well, there is a chaos bag. You do have to make tests, but there's no encounter deck. That's what I meant to say. And you can't take damage or horror or be defeated. And then when you draw a weakness, you cancel its revelation effect and discard it. Of course, if you have something that's stuck in your hand, like the tower or the devil, like those don't have revelation effects, I don't think. So too bad. I guess you're stuck with those, as well as anything else that might be not having a revelation effect. But yeah, you just kind of go through these. Where's the rest of my Vale cards? Yeah, there's slightly different ones for each of the 3 days, but yeah, here we go. You do have a chaos bag, you do have some tokens, but I just kind of like the map. I liked learning about the map. So you've got the crossroads, boarding house. Actually, this is all in the Hemlock Chapel. I believe it's up here somewhere. Outwood House is on this side. I even just kind of remember this from playing it several times, and I feel like, I think it's something like this. We can look at the map in the actual campaign guide in a second, but I feel like you get to know this place. It's like, yeah, I need to go over there. This is the one that has a clue. And they all have some kind of effect when you do something. So it says here, after you discover 1 clue, you get to read the codex entry. And I think the sort of unfortunate part on your first play is that they all do different things, and when we played, half of them were useless. So as you can see here, you go talk to William Hemlock, and then you get to draw a tome or talent card in the top 9 cards of your deck, and I think the person who did this just didn't have one of those, so it's kind of annoying. The other couple of them are really beneficial for everyone, drawing cards, play a tool asset. It's just kind of, I wish I had read through beforehand, because you're wasting actions moving around when you don't get anything from it. But for the preludes, and we'll talk about the rules here in general, it's kind of just gravy, because the prelude rules say that after you finish playing this scenario, and it's not really a scenario, it's a prelude. Think of it as like the beginning part of a scenario. You get to choose 1 asset in your play area to keep for the next scenario. It must be one that does not normally start in play, and you discard everything else in play and attachment in your play area. Which I think is a little weird because of cards like Stick to the Plan. I didn't really think of this when I played. I don't know if they're supposed to stay in play or not. there's kind of some rule stuff here that I get why they went down this route. I think it's neat to try out a different type of scenario, but honestly, like, they need to write a little bit more in the rules to make these sorts of things clear. So, you discard down to your opening hand size, and then, I don't know if you actually can read this, I've been pointing to things. You discard down to your opening hand size, and then shuffle your discard pile into your deck, and discard down to your starting resources. So, essentially what you're doing here is figuring out, through these like 3 or 4 rounds that you play, what is going to be your best opening hand for the next scenario. So you keep those 5 or however many cards you would have in your opening hand, and 5 resources or however many resources you would start with, and you kind of have your best foot forward. I was basically, quote unquote, getting a couple of rounds to mulligan for a lot of my assets, since as Wilson Richards, I wanted a bunch of tools, and that was pretty easy to do with playing the Preludes. But then there's like questions about the bag. Like, does the bag stay the same? Do you keep the blesses and curses in there if you put them in? The designers have said yes, but I really wish that they had made this a little bit more clear beyond just kind of at the current understanding is pretend this is like act 0.5 of a scenario, and you should, pretty much keep everything how it was at the end of your Prelude, except for all these things it says to get rid of. I don't know. Again, and it says here, when setting up the next scenario, skip steps 1 through 8 of setting up the game on page 27 of the rules reference. I think this precludes you from putting like damage and horror on you for trauma. I don't know what other weird interactions there might be with skipping those steps, but actually there is a location that lets you heal, I think. Yeah, this one, the boarding house, lets you heal 1 damage or 1 horror, right? So it makes sense that you would carry over that healing to the next scenario. So if you start with trauma, you can get rid of it through the boarding house action or any of your own actions. There's not that much time. I mean, you are sort of just planning out how to get as many codex entries as possible. Again, with the overall story of this campaign, I like the Preludes. I like doing these things. It feels like a playable interlude rather than just choosing options to read and then move on. It actually lets you make some decisions, and there's chance for actually failing some tests too. Okay, so at the end of that then says, go pick another scenario to play. And what we did was we played The Lost Sister. That was our first scenario. I'm not going to talk about these scenarios extensively other than just some notes that I have written down for myself. I liked the scenario. This one is where you go to Aquan, I believe, and you're going through caves to find the Lost Sister. And mostly it makes some neat things with the map and with the day and night mechanic. So I just want to pull out a couple of these locations here. On this side, it says things like which day it's on, something different happens, but a lot of these locations will say things like if it is day, or it'll also tell you that if it is a dark location, then it's going to become just night in general. So I don't know what this is like when you go there at night, but the sort of light and dark mechanic here kind of affects whether or not you treat things as day or night. I think it's on the agenda here. It says cards at dark locations use night effects and cards at other locations use day effects. So there's this kind of fun thing. If I just sort of peer through, these enemies here have light and dark sides. So what you want them to do is kind of move into the dark or into the light, depending on which side you want. I think it's usually in the light side, it's easier to attack them. Yeah, so this one, for example, you deal damage to it after it flips to the side. So you're flipping these creatures back and forth. We made a mistake when we played this. We got this guy out when we shouldn't have. He's only on an act flip. These guys are pretty neat too. Again, same deal. You want them kind of in the light. In the dark is a lot harder. And there's this cavern moss enemy. I did not care for this because I thought the rules were very weird. So it's aloof, but while it is attached to an asset, it may be attacked as if it were an enemy engaged with you. And After you succeeded a skill test while fighting or investigating at Cavern Moss's location, if it is ready, attach it to an item asset you control, and then that asset becomes blank except for traits. So what ended up happening was that it's still aloof while it's attached. At least that's my understanding here, because it doesn't say anything but that. It only says that while it's attached, it may be attacked without having to engage it as if it were aloof. So it's still aloof, so we just like had this thing cling on to an item that was useless otherwise, right? Like we had a Tennessee sour mash that wasn't doing anything, so it just stuck onto it, and we ignored it and walked around the rest of the map because it wouldn't make attacks opportunity. At least that's my understanding of how this was written. I wish they had written a little bit more to make that clear, that that's what's supposed to happen or what's not supposed to happen. We did have to pass it back and forth because this forced effect still matters. But otherwise, it was just you draw it. There's 3 of them, and there they are. Some other cool encounter cards that do something different based on if it's day or night. Again, based on your location being light or dark. I kind of wish that they had more. And this made things go into the light, which you probably don't want in some sense because of the location. They do more damage and get harder to kill. But neat effects. I like the scenario. I don't have much to say. There's a lot of other encounter cards that we see for the first time. I'll go through like the generic set in a little bit, but that was that scenario. So that was our first day scenario. I'm gonna have a big mess, hopefully off camera here. And we chose to, well, we didn't choose. We had our first interlude, which was totally fine. That's where you go choose who you want to have dinner with, and you get some more relationship status updates. You're kind of following more paths of people. Let's see, where is that interlude? Should be here. The prelude, rather, the first evening. So that unhelpfully, these are called preludes, even though they're not like the other preludes. I call them interludes, honestly. But yeah, you decide who you want to talk to, and then you get some bonus experience from this. You talk. I think we talked to Mother Rachel in this case. I will talk about all of the residents in a bit. I think we also talked to maybe Gideon, and then I think we talked to Simeon. Or rather, yeah, we talked to Simeon here. Okay. You also can not talk to anyone, and then you get this the Warrior Rock story asset. We didn't do that. There's always something you can do there. So the first, I like the first prelude in the evening just because you kind of just are continuing whatever you want to do, and no matter what you do, something good happens. And then we decided to follow Dr. Marquez's ideas and go play the Twisted Hollow, where we're going after Birdie, who's missing. And this giant bear kind of is something you'll fight in this scenario. I like this scenario a lot. You also have this choice at the beginning to tell the truth or to lie to Mother Rachel. If you get some help from Mother Rachel, she gives you a really good story asset, which is the really good lantern. So there's a couple of lanterns here. There's the this one, which is the Beacon of Hope, and it makes things a lot easier in the forest when we were going around searching for your way. This one it's okay. I think that just makes things a lot harder. But we decided to go with that one, and you just have a lot of woods here that you are shuffling together, and you're trying to find the correct location, I believe. Is that what you're doing at the beginning? So there's also this pursuit area thing, kind of a return from TFA. Okay, you have to go to the same lair location and then spend a bunch of clues, and then you have to find Birdie, and then you have to go back to the starting location, essentially. So it's kind of neat because we get a big random map. That's always a plus. There's a lot of really good maps, I think, in this campaign where it's random locations. You don't just memorize or know which way to go all the time. And most of the time, things come out in an order, like connections are always adjacent. So that's kind of why the Vale lantern is kind of neat, because basically you make everything that is connected to your location, including your location, lose the dark trait. So if you are not in the dark, I think at the end of the investigator phase, sorry, if you are in the dark, then you either must draw an enemy in pursuit or you take a horror. That's what that card says. So try not to do that. I thought this was a perfectly fine scenario. I didn't find it that difficult. Honestly, there were a lot of monsters, a lot of interesting monsters, some of them which are in the other set over here. A lot of them were massive, and some of them were aloof. I think that's kind of all to say about that. Where's the bear? Here we go. This guy was fun. Yeah. Not too bad, honestly. 11 health in our 3-person team. 5 fight. At this point, we had lots of weaponry, so not too bad. It does matter if you play this one for a future scenario, so I recommend you do play this one. Yeah, so you just have to do this, and you have to do it before darkness becomes too much. So darkness level goes up at the end of every couple of rounds. I think that's how it goes. But this one was fun. I think it was just a good kind of standard Arkham scenario. I will say, like, you can get, when you're trying to find your way out, it can be really difficult if you just don't find the right location. So you're searching through these woods for the starting location, wherever it went. I'm not going to look at all the locations, but oh, here it is. That's the one. If you can find it, then you're done. If it happens to be right next to where you started or where you were with the bear, then that's great. Otherwise, it may take a little while. And, that kind of variance is, a little bit like before the Black Throne and Circle Undone, but that's okay. I think there can be scenarios like that. All right, let's keep moving. So that was all of day 1. By the way, we should take a look at those cards from day 1 that are always there. So here's the day 1 art marker. And then when you play that last scenario, it is night 1. I like this art a lot. Probably will be the thumbnail for this one. And then these 3 cards, the swarm card here is always in your day 1. Test 3 agility. For each point you fail by, you must either lose a resource or take damage. A pretty fair treachery. I mean, that's kind of how this game goes. We're going to see something similar like that on day 2, which I guess I might as well tell you. Day 2 is the rainy day. So here's the day 2 art card. And the day 2 cards are a downpour. So this one is a intellect 3. For each point you fail by, you must either lose 1 action or place 1 of your clues on your location. Tough treachery. We haven't seen something like that since the Miskatonic Museum, an intellect treachery that makes you lose actions. If you do have clues, though, you can just drop them, which may not be such a bad thing. Or you just cancel this. All right, so what did we play during day 2? We played this one, the Silent Heath. This is the one where you go to the Pearl Estate, and this is okay. This is a fine scenario. You're trying to avoid all these like bugs or ants or something. There's a bunch of drones in here, and you get a bunch of tunnel locations. There's also some tunnel locations from other sets that go in, but you're trying to just sort of dig out these crystal remains from like a set of encounter cards that go beneath locations. They're kind of neat because when you get them, you can't just hold on to them forever. When your turn begins, you either take a damage or horror or either one, and this gets you victory points. So you have to find the remains and then get out. Fine. There's a bunch of interesting mechanics with these enemies. So there's a bunch of bugs, and most of them don't do much, but you don't want to get them into the victory display, or too many of them, partly because the tokens on this one start to get really nasty. And this was kind of wild. I think it's the agenda. Yeah, here it is. The agenda, if you have a bunch of insect enemies in the victory display here, you reveal tokens, and if you get either a skull or an autofail token, you spawn the set-aside Brood Queen enemy, and she is somewhere. She's a little nasty. I mean, it did happen. Here she is. Nice big Victory 2 enemy. It's honestly, I mean, you're waiting probably for a while. If this comes out super early, I guess it's kind of bad, but all these enemies have aloof. I know that's just part of the design of this campaign. There's so many aloof enemies for, say, Alessandra to parlay with. So that's neat. But this one also had the Agents of Color set in it, I think. And I want to like show you those because right now, because they were not something we were prepared for. So that's in our set aside because they are used in several. Yep. All right, so we're looking at these miasmatic shadows. And these guys can't be damaged except for relics, spells, science, or encounter cards. And you just can't get rid of them that easily, but they're aloof for a while. So we had them hanging out. I don't think we had anything except for Kate's science cards to defeat them. I think we just didn't. We just never tried to get that forced effect to happen, which is not easy. So discarding one or more cards in your hand at its location, it'll engage you. And then getting rid of it's hard, so we just tried our best not to do that. Okay, that is that scenario. I thought it was fine. It was fairly... I mean, it's okay. I think I might like it again on a replay and see what it's like on a different day, but I kind of felt like it was pretty nondescript. Good, but nothing that really jumped out at me. What did jump out at me, on the other hand, was the Night 2 scenario. So there is a interlude for this. Actually, I want to talk about, before we do that one, the interlude for the second day. So before you play the night scenario on the second day, you have the second evening prelude, and you decide, because there's a big dance tonight, you decide who you want to dance with, and everyone gets to choose someone to dance with, and you could choose yourself or Dr. Marquez, which is interesting. However, if you choose to dance with someone who they're not at a relationship level 3 or higher, then you just lose your opportunity to do anything. So I wish they had said, if otherwise, go pick someone else. Now, I get that there may not be someone else who's at relationship level 3 if you're not doing enough things. So that's probably why they didn't do that. But you could still pick like Dr. Marquez or Dancing Alone or something up here. I just don't like when you're not supposed to read ahead, right? We got the hang of it after we picked the right one. We said, well, we better pick the ones that have relationship 3 or better. I just wish that they didn't. Edge of the Earth did this pretty well, right? It was, if they didn't have anything to give you, you could go pick again. Okay. Right, so then we decided to go with the Longest Night. And this is a bear of a scenario. And I say this because there's also a bear in it, the same one as before. If you were able to kill the bear in that previous scenario, the Twisted Hollow, the bear is a little easier to kill in this one. But this is a tower defense scenario. So we've got these barriers, decoys, and traps. And this helps you prevent the onslaught from happening at least a little bit. So we've got the farmhouse and then some arrangement of farm locations around, and just try to move things out of the way a little bit. Then there's going to be outer fields at the very outer ends, and then I guess one of them you don't use. And you're trying to keep the captives, I don't want to go into the story right here, from being attacked by all of the creatures. So if they get to the farmhouse, then that's what happens. There's also a horse you can pick up, which is kind of neat. But we've got the bear that starts. I did kill the bear with the sledgehammer 4. That was neat. But you have a whole bunch of these enemies here, and they have the red back, which is fun. It's actually a totally different back, if you notice here, because I guess it's the moon, or I suppose. Anyway, the red back here. And you always draw one of these for each player, as long as I didn't miss something, for each player after you've drawn encounter phase. So they start spawning in places where they say. So this is the south, that one's the east, this one goes to the west, that one goes to the north, and you have to prevent them from moving too much. But as you can see here, they have aloof, so it's kind of hard to attack them. But also, and this one's also hard to get because it reduces the damage dealt to 1, and it ignores these barriers. So remember, there's these different things you can put out by spending clues and other things. Barriers, decoys, and traps. So all of them ignore something. This one ignores barriers. I guess this one doesn't ignore anything. But it heals, which sucks. This one ignores decoys. Decoys, traps, traps, traps. This one is aloof and it ignores everything, including the fire treacheries. It's another way to do things. This one ignores barriers. I wish they had color coded these a little better, because on the table you start to forget what these all do. So I kind of wish that, I don't know, the ones that ignored barriers were brown in some way, maybe blue if it ignores a decoy, and red if it ignores traps. Something to make it a little easier, because this gets to be a problem, honestly. This guy ignores everything, and he's very tough. So they do 2 horror, but actually it's 2 damage to this. And we did not make it through this one. We resigned, because you're allowed to resign pretty early. Man, there's just so many enemies, and they've got a lot of health. And it was hard for us to keep up with this one. We, like I said, we did kill the bear, because it has victory 2, and then we resigned. If we didn't, bad things would have happened. So it's a good thing we got out. But I would love to play this one again and just see what happens, because honestly, it's tough but fun. I like tough but fun. Did we look at the Night 2 art before? I don't think so. Well, there it is. You can see it's a picture of this scenario. Neat. So this one's good. It's just I don't know what the intention was. Like, are you supposed to be able to beat this one, or you just sort of battle it out until you've had enough? All right. So we resigned. The captives all died, but that is the scenario. Oh, there's also some awful treacheries in here. This one was really bad. So this one has the doom, backwards doom thing. So doom on the agenda. Where is the agenda? Doom on the agenda counts backwards. So you subtract instead of adding. So you can remove, you have to get to 10 basically to win. So this one, you either remove a doom from the agenda. Basically, it's like Ancient Evils, I guess. Or you deal 2 damage to the captive story asset, or you take 3 direct damage and 3 direct horror. Just awful. This one's what killed us, though. We failed this one towards the end. For each point you fail by, you choose a different one of those tough enemies. Ready it, move, engage, and attack. Again, the barriers and decoys are supposed to help you stop that, but 1, 2, 3, there's 4 of them in the deck. Oh boy. It's a lot. I mean, it was fun, but I think it was maybe a bit much. Maybe. All right, that was the longest night. So then you play one last Prelude in the morning of the 3rd day. And 3rd day art looks like this. The 3rd day also gets its own treacheries. This one's interesting because it's starting to throw in the discard cards from hand thing. So yeah, watch out for that in the last few scenarios. We played Hemlock House. That's this one. This is the one that maybe you've heard about. It has the enemy locations, and you're basically doing a little bit of remodeling. So I don't have much to say about this one either. It's just you make a map with, you know, some rooms on it, a washroom, etc. There is a couple of things that are always in play. The foyer, I guess, goes down the bottom. And then there's some enemies and such. But the real interesting part of the scenario is that you flip these over and they become massive enemies, but also locations. So you can get clues from them to try to flip them back over. You also can just kill them. They have 3 health plus 2 per investigator. They don't make attacks of opportunity. And when they do flip, though, something bad happens. There's a predation test in this one. It's kind of like the beginning of Dream Eaters. There's a infestation test. You just make a separate bag and pull a token out, and something happens random at the beginning of the enemy phase. Beginning of the what is it? When do you do the predation test? When the Mythos phase ends. That's when. Okay. Anyway, you keep doing this until you get to the end, and then you do one last battle with an even larger room, and that's it. We did very well in this one. Sledgehammer does work pretty well. I think it's a neat scenario. It's well designed. I don't want to say too much more because you should play it, but I don't really have any criticisms. I think it was not too difficult, and I liked in all these scenarios that there's always some of the non-player characters that are around and they're doing something. So depending on which day you play this one, I think you get some different stuff. And we got, I think Judith and maybe Theo were here, maybe William, maybe I don't remember. Okay, so you do that, and then you play one last prelude, and this is strange because it's a prelude. Let's go to it. The final evening. And this one, unlike the other ones that I was calling interludes, you actually play this one. So you realize that, and I'll talk about the story in a little bit more, but like the story here, you start to realize that things are going down. And you need to confront Mother Rachel about what's been going on, especially in that longest night scenario. And Dr. Marquez and you are basically like, everyone's crazy, we need to save people. And this is like the first one where you realize everyone's kind of in a frenzy. And so you basically return to the Vale and you play through it with a couple locations that are changed, and you actually have to do a few things. It's not just everything's nice and you go talk to people and that's the end, but I believe there are some enemies, and I think Mother Rachel is certainly one of them, since I know that's what you have to do. Let's see here. Yeah, you do have to, at the end of this scenario, try to defeat her, and it's not too hard because this is kind of scenario 5, 6, whatever you want to call it. I guess it's 6.5. So you do have to try to kill her at the end before Doom runs out. If you do that, you end this scenario, and then you play another one. There's also stuff to do in terms of talking to people as usual. There's a lot of codex entries for this one. But notably, at the end of this one, it doesn't say anything like, oh, you keep your hand or an asset in play. You're done. This is not a normal prelude. I wish they had signposted that better in the campaign guide, or maybe even in the scenario itself. But it's not actually one of the daytime preludes. It is now nighttime. Once you finish this one, you begin the finale, which is Fate of the Vale. And it's a little crazy. There's a lot of stuff here. There's like basically 3 versions of it. The first part is always the same. Look at all of these act cards. And the first thing to note is that you'd lose your investigator card. So they've done this before, but this one is a little bit different than the time it is before, where you have your stats are basically equal to the number of cards in hand, maximum of 5. You can still play things as normal, but you don't have your investigator ability. However, you can use this ability to commit a card and double the skill icons on the card. So it's a reminiscent of the one they did before. And where did your investigator card go? Well, it goes into... Where's the card? The Abyss. So there's rules about the Abyss. You take 5 cards, I believe, from the top of your deck, along with your investigator card, and everyone's gets shuffled into all of the encounter cards. And you draw cards during the Mythos phase from the bottom of the deck until you get an encounter card, so you don't get to see your player cards. But during the first act anyways, in order to get your cards back, you have to succeed at a skill test at a lair location during your turn, and you can draw one of the cards from the bottom of the Abyss based on the number of points you succeed by, and hopefully you get your investigator card. This seemed tough at first, but we got kind of lucky. Now, I know we had our cards sleeved, so it was easy to see everything, so maybe we were cheating there, although the book does say, it's okay if your cards are sleeved. That's fine. So you just have to get your true investigator card, and we got all of ours within, I think, about 3 rounds. So honestly, it wasn't bad. This card here isn't terrible. You just have to pay attention to what your stats are, and you try to over-succeed in order to dig out your cards. Thankfully, I actually had a couple of my weaknesses stuck in the Abyss, so that was nice. You also can spend clues in order to get plus skill value, so that's helpful. It was really helpful for Kate. She was just basically double dipping on clues. But once you do that, you need to go around and get some more clues. And where's the deck of things? Well, we have to talk about the Cosmic Emissary. So I believe it's these guys. So first off, you have to put them in a particular arrangement. So there's a formation here. And I'm not going to get it right here since I'm not looking at this properly, but it forms a little picture. I guess we can look at the... Where's the other one? There should be 4. Yeah, here we go. Okay, yeah, it goes like this, and then one of them is this way. That looks right. Okay, so this is in the middle of your table, and you're instructed to not look at the abyss, or the Cosmic Emissary. If you look at it for more than 15 seconds at a time, you are driven insane. Why do they do that? I don't know. But they each have some different abilities on them about how to make them not attack you. So you're at locations, I think they're mirror nests, something like this. I don't remember exactly how it goes. Something like this, and you need to make sure you either fight or evade them so they don't attack you. But I seem to recall there was even more nonsense here. Yes, once you get to the next phase of this, so you've gotten your cards and everything back, they flip over to this side, I think, and they become really, really tough because they will attack you if you... Let's take a look at one of them. Like if you reveal one of those tokens during a skill test, they will attack you or the test automatically fails. This is what killed me, honestly. This is, I think, for all of the tokens. Yeah, I didn't look at these too carefully because you're not really allowed to. What is this one? Victory 5? Oh my goodness. Okay, well, let's not get into that too much. But yeah, this is tough. Now, depends how this actually plays out. It really depends on what you do in the final choice. So you've got a choice of, do you want to just destroy them in the abyss? I think you want to go back to the Vale, or do you want to go, I think, set the Vale on fire? I think that's the other option. Let me take a look at the campaign guide because this is a little convoluted, but I actually really like that there's lots of paths here. But man, let's see. Yes. Okay. Right. So we did the Fate of the Vale 2 because I really wanted to go back to the Vale and see what this place was like with different locations. So where were they? I think all of these, yeah, on the other side have a night location, which intrigued the hell out of me. I was like, that seems like fun. So you actually get to return to all these locations again, but it's nighttime and things are a little spooky and you have to do, some different things. We didn't make it too far because these guys were following us around and it was just bad. It was bad news. I think this one stays in the middle and these go around. I don't remember, but this scenario is really tough. I've heard a lot of people say that this part is really difficult. I found the part after you get past the first act or two to be much more difficult. Maybe it's because of the path we chose. We actually had the ability to choose all 3 of the paths based on how we had done in the scenario in the campaign, but we chose one that didn't work out too well. Like I said, it was revealing one of these just turned it into an auto fail or I died. And I don't know how to do better at this scenario other than pack more soak or pull better tokens, but I think there were only 2 tablets and that's what killed me. But the other ones could have been just as bad. So I've heard from people that this is extremely difficult and they found it to be a worthy challenge of a finale, and I would agree. But I've played it 1 time. So I don't know. Maybe some people played it and they were like, this is too easy. But even on standard difficulty, we did lose our blind playthrough of the campaign only because of the scenario. And it wasn't because of our decks not being prepared. The treacheries in here really ramped up in difficulty. Let me see if there's any more in here that are worth talking about. Yeah, we've got sublimation, a 4 willpower test. If you fail, you either get rid of your cards or you get attacked. And then this one, I think, was also pretty tough. 4 agility. I mean, that's kind of normal, I suppose. But you get attacked or you lose cards. And then, yeah, this one, again, you lose cards or take horror. This is also a good time, I think, to show some of the encounter sets that showed up here from the main sets, which were really tough. So, I mean, I like this scenario quite a bit. Did we look at this side, the Night 3? Well, there you go. I really liked it, but it was hard. So let's look at a couple of these cards that did show up throughout the campaign. So there were a bunch of caverns. I won't talk about those. The Crystal Parasite was fun. This is a neat enemy. So this enemy is always set aside. It's a victory point. It's pretty easy to fight, at least during the daytime. It's got 6 HP. However, it doesn't just come out. After you draw 1 or more cards in your deck, you place a resource on this card. And if there's 6 of them, then you spawn this. That, I think, is super cool. That is a really brilliant way to make an encounter card. There's a lot of encounter cards that deal you direct damage, or at least you might have to take direct damage. So that's that. We already talked about the Miasmatic Shadow. Oh yeah, this one was also awful in the finale. Testing willpower 3. For each point you fail by, take damage, which can only go to an asset or horror or discard cards at random. That combos really nicely with this guy. Tough. Strange mutations. I think there was one like this for damage as well, but this is kind of neat. If you have more damage or horror on you, it's easier. Fungal rot. So blank assets. Cool art on these. These cards had really neat art. Yeah, this is what I was talking about. The damage one. Desiccation. Yeah, this is as additional cost for an investigator. Play a card, you take a damage. Awful. Neat art on this as well. This one was definitely in the finale. I remember it. The night card here, discarding a card at random, and then you just take horror probably if you have expensive stuff. Captivating Gleam. This is the one for Patrice. If you have no cards in hand, you take 5 horror and get rid of it. What can I say? It just happens. There's 3 of those. All right, some flora and fauna, I believe. I don't remember this one so much. Forest Watcher. This is one of the few enemies, I think, that gets Doom. I don't remember any others, honestly. This is a big deer. This is from, I remember just in the pursuit area. I assume it shows up in a different scenario, but I didn't see it. More forest stuff. I'm not going to look at everything here. I do remember this one. Amanitas are mushrooms, I think. Aloof or massive. Lots of direct horror and damage. I know it's because of Hank. Corpse Lichen. Psychotropic Spores. This is, again, if you draw any cards. The other one was similar about doing damage if you move, I think. Or that later. Yeah, these are good cards. Fire, we saw in a lot of scenarios, but it actually never... We saw it as something to set aside, but it actually never made it into our campaign. So I don't know what these do. I didn't read it very carefully, but they possibly could show up in a few scenarios. So that's it. All right. I guess I have some more things to talk about. This is a long video. I really liked the story. I think the story, even though I mentioned this before as a positive, even though you are not really driving for the narrative yourself, I think the whole thing benefits from being along for the ride. They haven't done that in other campaigns before. So I'm glad that they tried it out here. I think it was neat. Instead, you're really trying to figure out what you want to do with all of these people. I don't know what they all do if they are your friends. There's some neat stuff with River Hawthorne and their cousin, I think, William Hemlock, that has some neat story stuff. That's we discovered. Simeon, I tried to be his friend. Theo, I think, has some neat stuff. But you get to take control of all of these guys in different scenarios under different circumstances, and they give you some benefits. So like you get an extra action to move. William Hemlock, you get +1 intellect. Simeon, you get +1 agility. So you kind of want to find the ones that are going to be good for you. I like this. This was neat. Again, you do follow their story much more than other campaigns do. But I felt like the story overall was neat because you kind of felt this impending doom. Stuff was going down. Immediately you knew something was up. Do you really trust this cult with Mother Rachel? We didn't so much, but maybe there's a path where you do become her best friend, which seems interesting. But you felt like things were just going wrong. Weird things were growing in the forest. Mutations of crabs and things. Like there's just a lot that you're like, And you felt with the day and the day system of structure of 3 days that eventually you knew things were just going to get harder and worse as the days went on, getting closer to this festival, that you knew this feast was coming at the end of the 3rd day. And it's inevitable. It's like you're just sort of waiting for stuff to go down. And that's how I felt that they totally landed that sense of dread and horror as the days went on, and they pulled it off at the end. And I really felt like the finale, as well as the prelude right beforehand, did a great job. I thought that was excellent. I really felt like the people were all in a frenzy, and we were just doing what you could to try to stop things from happening, to kind of no avail. So, man, I loved that. I just felt like it was coming, and it was okay that you knew it was coming, right? So I hope you enjoy that too when you play this campaign. The difficulty of the entire campaign was a little uneven, just since that's totally normal in campaigns, that some of them were harder than others. I did feel like the 2 ones that we lost, The Longest Night and the finale, were a lot harder than the other ones. Like a lot. The other ones I think were fine. I didn't notice huge issues, but we didn't just like totally crush it either. But I really felt like a second pass through might make things a little bit more friendly. But that's okay. I don't play this game to necessarily win all the time. I play for it to be fun. I don't actually play for the story so much. This is one of the first times I really believed in the story being an asset to the gameplay. So I have that feedback. And the other bit of feedback is sometimes I don't think the rules were explained well enough to my liking anyway. I don't think it's as bad as Concealed from the Scarlet Keys, where they took like a page and a half to explain how cards work with Concealed and still left a million questions. I think the Prelude thing is... It could be better. And there's a few rough spots on some of the other cards here as well. But it's not terrible. I still have questions, but doesn't make it unplayable or too confusing. So I really rate this campaign highly. I know some people don't. I know some people have loved it. So I imagine as the weeks go by and months go by, more people will be playing the whole thing, and they'll form their own opinion. I'd like to play it again and choose some different things and see how that changes my impression. But overall, I had a great time, and I really think this is an excellent addition to the Arkham Horror, the card game universe. And I can't wait to see what the next campaign that we get is going to be like with the new design team. So that's it. Thank you for watching and listening to me talk about this campaign with some spoilers. Please let me know some of the details of what you thought if you played this one down in the comments. Everyone has an opinion. That's totally fine. But it'd be neat to see what experiences you had and give me more details than just, I liked it, I didn't, but what did you play as? What were your decks like? What choices did you make? Because I think there's so many permutations of what you could do in this campaign that it's hard to judge, and I imagine impossible to playtest. So that's that. I will see you again for more on Arkham Horror the card game and maybe more on Hemlock Vale in the future.